Just because men make Bitcoin seem technical and complicated doesn't mean that it is. Think about it. As that TikTok audio goes,
and I said, well, how hard can it be? Boys do it. And then I said, how hard can it be? Boys do it.
This series will compare Bitcoin and its processes to things you use in your everyday life, like purses, Uber, checks, and even Costco. Everyone can understand how it works and what it does, because Bitcoin isn't just for the bros, it's for the broads. Bitcoin for Broads Part 2, How It Works. Blockchains and mining. These may sound like buzzwords, but they are an important part of the Bitcoin process. A blockchain simply facilitates and posts all Bitcoin transactions. Think of a blockchain like a ledger, except this one is public. All transactions taking place are applied to this public ledger. Each block is simply a group of records, and this block contains a bunch of transactions taking place within a certain time period. It is chained to another set of records and another, so on, making it a blockchain. Imagine looking at a spreadsheet and seeing one transaction after another listed down the sheet. This would be the block. This sheet would be chained to other sheets inside the entire workbook. The blockchain is nothing more than that, a linked set of records. These transactions are conducted, recorded, and secured using a series of computations that we'll get into in more detail in just a moment. Let's say Jane wants to send Jill 1 Bitcoin. How would this take place? Well, Jill will have 2 items that are important for this transaction. The first is a public key. This is what you provide to the person who wants to pay you. Well, Jill will have 2 items that are important for the transaction. The first is a public key. This is what you provide to a person who wants to pay you. Jill will also have a private key that she will have knowledge of and no one else. Think of this like logging into a website. Your user ID may be public, but your password is private. That's the same with public and private keys in the Bitcoin world. Jane will send the Bitcoin from her public key to Jill's public key. Those are the addresses, so it knows where it's going. When Jane and Jill send and receive the Bitcoin, their private keys will come into play. Jane will input her private key. It acts like a signature, just like you might sign a check to verify it was from you. The private key says, this is my public key, and I can prove it by providing my private key to the blockchain. When Jane sends that Bitcoin, she'll also have to input her private key to confirm to the system that she is who she says she is. That's her account and her money, and she's sending it. When Jane's private key is provided, it's basically a signature, just like you might sign a check to verify that it was from you. Likewise, when you provide your private key to the Bitcoin system, it's saying, this is me, and this is how I'm confirming it. The transaction will be timestamped and unmodifiable, posted to the public blockchain forever. This transaction will be sent through something called a hashing algorithm. The technical name for the exact algorithm used in Bitcoin is SHA-256. Hashing is merely taking a key or string of characters and turning it into another value. In simple terms, it's a complex math riddle. This math problem goes out to nodes, which is any computer connected to the Bitcoin network that runs the Bitcoin software. Anyone can connect to the network and solve that problem. That's what makes it a peer-to-peer network. People that have equipment and solve these problems are called miners. The first miner to solve that riddle gets to post the transaction to the ledger, which in Bitcoin world is called a blockchain, like we just learned. This person will get a reward for using their computer to solve the problem. As a result, they're given a very small piece of Bitcoin. Okay, so you may be asking yourself, what's the deal with the math riddle? If each party is sending money using their keys, wouldn't that be pretty easy to verify? The math riddle seems like a random thing to throw in the middle of a financial transaction that doesn't make any sense and doesn't mean anything. Well, I was thinking the same thing and went down quite a few rabbit holes to find an answer. The first breakthrough was when I realized the math problem has nothing to do with actually verifying or confirming the transaction. Let's face it, financial transactions have been confirmed using computers for decades. Credit cards are swiped, checks are scanned, and wire transfers are sent all the time. It would be very simple for a computer to look at the transaction between Jane and Jill and go, okay, I see both of your public and private keys, I see the amount, and the sender has the available amount in their Bitcoin wallet. Everything is good, verified. The math problem is merely a safety mechanism designed to keep Bitcoin secure. It's what makes this system unique and so safe. This can get a little bit technical, but it's still easy enough to understand when you think about it. It serves as a barrier to entry. Solving these equations requires large amounts of electricity and special computer equipment, which comes at a cost. It's kind of like how Costco charges a member fee to customers. They don't want just any Tom, Dick, and Harry walking into the store and messing things up. Those $1.50 hot dogs are for members only. If you know, you know. So, why do we have this fee? Well, a shoplifter or thief or general vandal is probably not going to want to pay an upfront cost of $60 to go in and mess things up at Costco. They got your name, your address, your phone number, and that cute little picture of you on the back of your card. These thieves and vandals, they'll go to Walmart where they can do that for free. The complex math riddle is the same thing in Bitcoin. It keeps just anyone from getting inside the blockchain and messing things up or stealing. Solving that math riddle requires certain pieces of computer equipment plus a significant amount of electricity. There is no known way to solve the math riddle without all this computing power. It's not something you can do by hand with a piece of paper and a pen. This means anyone looking to post transaction has to spend money up front to do so, that barrier to entry. If it was easy to post, someone could constantly throw up solutions to the problem, working to gobble up the network by posting a majority of the transactions all across the Bitcoin network. This is commonly referred to as a 51% problem. Whoever would get 51% could essentially control Bitcoin, thus creating a centralized system, the very thing that Bitcoin is trying to escape. So this upfront electricity cost and computer cost keeps the best hackers out there from trying to break the blockchain. Since they got to spend that money to get inside the blockchain, they might as well just mine and get a certain amount of money back. In a way, it disincentivizes crooks. Let's explore this a little bit more. Let's say someone just wanted to expend all that electricity and take over Bitcoin and the network for some malevolent purpose. Could it happen? No. You see, the blockchain, remember, it's just a public ledger, is saved on anyone's computer who is mining or connected to the Bitcoin network. That's thousands of computers. So if someone does mine to the extent of taking over the network and rerouting all Bitcoin to themselves, it would fail. The value of the Bitcoin would drop to zero as Bitcoin users learn that someone was taking over, all by looking at those public blockchain transactions. So if someone does mine to the extent of taking over the network and rerouting all Bitcoin to themselves, it would fail. The value of Bitcoin would drop to zero as Bitcoin users learned that someone was taking over. That would be easy to detect because the ledger of transactions, the blockchain, is public. It would be obvious that something nefarious was going on, plus all the other computers connected to the network would start to detect that something was awry. So while someone could try to take over, the cost would be prohibitively high, and in the end, their stolen crypto would be worth nothing. So why spend millions and millions of dollars to then have nothing of value? Now you might be asking yourself, why would a Bitcoin miner want to use their computer and electricity to post these blockchain transactions? I mean, hey, this is a business. It's not UNICEF who's going to volunteer their time so someone else can make these transactions. Well, these miners get a small piece of a Bitcoin. Miners try to maximize their work by securing low electricity costs and using the best equipment to try and come out ahead. Maybe you get a machine and mine $10 a day and have $6 in electricity cost. That would net them $4 in profit, and they keep doing it over and over with more and more machines to try to make even more and more money. Okay, so back to the transaction. It goes through. Then what? Well, that hashing algorithm will spit out something called a transaction hash. It's an alphanumeric string. Think of it like a confirmation number when you order something, except this one is much, much longer. The transaction hash is also known as a transaction ID, and you can use it to look up your transaction on the blockchain. This long hash string is the cryptographic byproduct of that complicated algorithm math problem. But don't worry, although the hash string is publicly available on the blockchain, there's no private information contained within it. You can't generate any sort of actual usable data from it. The website TechTarget has a really good analogy for this. They say the hash string that you see is like a thumbprint, but that doesn't mean you can produce a real thumb from it. Although the hash doesn't really mean anything once it gets spit out, it does have an important part in the blockchain further on down the road. You see, each hash string is unique and it can't be predicted ahead of time. It can only be solved in the moment. This hash string will then be rolled into the next transaction to produce that hash string. This interconnected framework makes the transactions incredibly secure. You can't change it after it's produced, which makes it safe from hackers. And if someone would try to go back and change that hash, it could create a ripple effect in the ones that come after it. This makes the blockchain and all transaction inside of it virtually tamper-proof. So, after all of that technical jargon, let's review. When Jane sends Jill that Bitcoin, the transaction will go through a complicated hashing mechanism. Once it's solved by a miner, the transaction will be posted into the blockchain. The result of solving that math problem will spit out a hash string. This hash string looks like a confirmation number. It helps you look up the transaction that you just conducted in that public ledger, the blockchain. A hash string will then be produced from this complicated math problem. Jane and Jill can use that to look up the transaction they just conducted. In the end, Jane and Jill get an easy, private, and secure way to send money, and the miner gets a small reward for their effort. It's a very simple process, but it has a lot of moving parts behind the scenes. It's what makes Bitcoin so unique. Tune in next Monday night for part 3 of Bitcoin for Broads, what makes Bitcoin different from other cryptocurrencies. And don't forget to mark your calendars for July 25th to 27th. Ladies Love Politics will be attending the Bitcoin Conference in Nashville, Tennessee. Join me online as I cover the event, or grab a ticket and see for yourself the wonderful world of Bitcoin. Ladies Love Politics is a proud media partner of Bitcoin 2024.